Um, Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today in this co-production week. So we are here today to talk about the theme of reciprocity, a really, really important topic alongside co-production and a topic that's come up in a lot of co-production conversations that we've been having in recent months. So for anybody that's not attended any meetings run by Skivvies or had the opportunity to meet myself, so my name's Emma Rosillo. I'm the co-production and engagement project coordinator at Skivvies. I started my role back in October, and the purpose of my role really is to start to bring to life the aims on and objectives of the co-production promise, and start helping workplaces and service sectors across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent implement the benefits of co-production and see the benefits of co-production and start to be able to utilise them in their everyday practices. So I will share a little bit more on other ways to get involved as we go through the session and other opportunities. But yeah, that's my role and what I do. So lovely to meet you all, and again, thank you for attending. So the aims of the session today and what we're going to do for the purpose of this session, we're going to talk a little bit firstly about what reciprocity means and what that might look like across different organisations and different working sectors and practices. What that can look like when we're working with different people, whether that be young people, families, parents, carers, or adults. Reciprocity tends to be quite a buzzword in co-production, but it's actually drilling down into what reciprocity means and ways in which we can use it that benefit both the organisation and the service users. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it is, and then we're going to have a bit of a spotlight, a bit of a guest speaker session from Petter and Benny, who are going to share a little bit about how they've used reciprocity in a previous kind of case study in their work. And then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A, a little bit of discussion time, where we did field the opportunity to raise or ask questions around reciprocity, barriers or challenges that might exist in your own workplaces or own working practices. So we're going to present some of those questions that were put forward and then allow time for us as a group to kind of discuss them, chip in on them, and see what discussions we can bring to the table and see what kind of valuable contributions and ideas we might be able to take from each other. So I'm just going to share my screen with everybody, and we'll get started with the first little bit. So hopefully everybody can see that. It should just be coming up. There we go. So yeah, as I said, my role is the co-production and engagement project coordinator. So just a little bit about reciprocity and what we actually mean by reciprocity, because I think it's important, or really important as a starting point, to actually define it and talk a little bit about what it is. So what do we mean by the term reciprocity, and what are its benefits and challenges? So the actual term itself, what we mean by that, and what we're hoping to achieve through the benefits of reciprocity, is when service users and professionals come together and they work as equal partners. I think one of the biggest things around reciprocity is that power sharing. It's embedding that co-production and involving service users and those with lived experience from the outset. It's getting them involved at all aspects of the project and all opportunities, and it's really coming together and sharing that power. It's getting rid of hierarchies, it's making their voices feel valued and recognised, and it's using those service users and their lived experience as an asset to improve those services and make sure that those services are timely and responsive, and that's really, really important. Reciprocity, when we're talking about reciprocity, is usually a mutual exchange, and very often when we talk about reciprocity and how it's used in co-production, a lot of people feel that it's very, very often a monetary exchange, or it's something that's rewarded in terms of a monetary value. So that might be in terms of a voucher or monetary contribution for taking part in a survey or sharing their lived experience. And at times that is absolutely what it can be. But it's also recognising that other skills and other benefits can be exchanged through reciprocity. It can be an exchange of skills. It can be presented in lots and lots of different ways. It's also recognising through reciprocity that it's about treating service users and those with lived experience as valued contributors. It's about them feeling that their input is recognised, and that they are helping to shape and design those services and lead to those service improvements. So it's about keeping them informed, involving them in every step of the way, and making sure that we're feeding back those changes that they're having that direct impact on, so that they can really see how their thoughts, values and experiences are driving those service improvements. And I think that's really, really important. So it's how we use reciprocity to really see those benefits. So some of the benefits of reciprocity when it's done correctly and when it's utilised in the right way. So reciprocity can build confidence and improve outcomes, both for working professionals and service users. It builds their confidence. People feel valued for their skills, and those services are improved so they're able to meet the needs of the people that use them more timely and with better accuracy. In the long run, when it's done properly, reciprocity used alongside co-production, it helps to save resource. So community support, when they're engaged and when they're utilised in those service design, it reduces pressure on staff, and really building and establishing those relationships where service users have that value from the outset. It creates those effective relationships. It builds better community relations, and it also allows us to be transparent. It allows that relationship to be built on trust, where people will acknowledge that sometimes things might go wrong, things might not happen as quickly as they want it to, but it's about having those open and honest conversations and keeping people informed at all times, which is one of the benefits of reciprocity when it's done properly. It also promotes equality, and it helps reduce isolation. So what we see when we see reciprocity utilised effectively is those power gaps and those power struggles and those hierarchies start to shrink. So those imbalances of power between professionals and service users, or professionals and young people, families, that group participation starts to come to the forefront, and that really helps embed those social networks and those relationships. And when those community links are established, that's where the power comes from. It's that ability to work together and build things for the benefit of everybody. So some of the things that we'll touch on today in terms of barriers, and some of the things that people might have encountered when talking about reciprocity or trying to utilise reciprocity in their own working practices. So there are a lot of challenges, but we still have a little bit of a way to go around this, and some of these did come up still as barriers in our workforce survey that we issued recently. The first one, and probably one of the biggest areas of challenge, is tokenism, or potential exploitation. So that's where people worry that even when they engage in reciprocity, that their input is going to be ignored, or it's going to be overruled, or it might be that they are engaged in decision making when those decisions have already been made and they don't truly feel like they've been involved from the outset. The other side of that, in terms of potential exploitation, is that some people can feel like they're working for free, like their views and their values are being recognised, but they're not seeing any kind of mutual exchange in that. They're not getting anything back from putting everything in. Funding constraints and resource strain can be a huge one. So Traditional budgets reward outputs and end goals, not necessarily relationship building. And a lot of people recognise as well that to use and utilise reciprocity effectively and accurately, we do need to invest that time. We do need to put aside that time for those meetings, whether they're face to face, whether they're online, whether people have to travel. They need to be regular, that input needs to be sustained, that feedback needs to be regular. And a lot of those are a huge time investment, which a lot of organisations struggle to embed or struggle to still find the time for. Power imbalances can be a huge one, where there are hierarchies that exist, and it is really, really difficult to change those or challenge those. So sometimes service users or those that are contributing might feel like they are disempowered or their decisions are being overruled. And the last one really, and one of probably the biggest barriers, is where consultation and co-production are still confused. So we might engage service users, we might engage and welcome their thoughts and seem really appreciative of those, but we're doing it and at the wrong time and not in the correct way. So it might be that service users are consulted on a new aspect of service design, but actually the service has already been planned, and it's just a case of using their views to dot the I's and cross the T's. So rather than be involved from the outset and actually share their ideas and help formulate those projects from the start, they're being addressed or they're being involved at a time when decisions have already been made. And again, that's where that can lead to that disempowering. So a lot of things to consider there and a lot of things to talk about, which we'll hopefully come on to shortly. But what I'm going to do at this point in the session is I'm going to hand over to our spotlight. So I'm going to welcome Petter and Lenny to share a little bit more about the success of their reciprocity and one of their co-production projects. So I'm going to stop sharing mine. Just bear with me.
Thanks, Emma.
Okay, no problem.
Vanny, are you okay to share the slides? Because I'm still seem to be having a few. I've had lots of IT problems this morning, so if I try and share them, I might crash everything. Hi everybody, I'm Peter Curnow. I'm Senior Commissioning Manager within the Supportive Communities team, which is part of Public Health at Staffordshire County Council. And the Supportive Communities programme is very much about enabling people to live independently at home for as long as possible with support from family, friends and their local community. And Venny and I are here today to get to talk about a bit of a sort of an engagement project that we were asked to lead on and pick up. And I've called it, are you all right there, Venny, if you managed to, sorry, yeah, fab. I've called it Engaging Differently because I'm going to be completely honest and say I am not here trying to pretend that this is an example of best practice co-production, because it isn't. I think I'm firmly in the trying to do better camp where that's concerned. But I think what hopefully is helpful is when we were kind of given this piece of work to do, I sat and did a lot of thinking about reciprocity, how we were going to do it, because that's something that's really important to me. So we did a lot of thinking around, okay, how are we going to approach this? And sorry, Vanny, yeah. Given the sort of all of the constraints that we had, and I know you've just talked really clearly, Emma, around some of those issues, some of those barriers, but also some of the constraints, you know, working within our means, so to speak. So I'll talk through it and hopefully there'll be a chance to ask any questions at the end. Next slide, please, Venny. So the question we were given was that people wanted to understand the enablers and barriers, and they could be perceived or actual, for people accessing and receiving adult social care services and support. So this is linked to a lot of the thinking we do about the CQC assessment framework, and actually how do we really make sure that our offer is truly accessible, and trying to understand a bit more about it. We were given as a bit of a focus it was focused on diverse communities, and so we focused it in East Staffordshire, and we decided to focus very specifically to make the task a bit more manageable on people who speak English as a second language. We felt that actually, if you're thinking about trying to access services, actually that people for whom English is a second language is a really good kind of way of looking at our accessibility, really. And then we narrowed it down to say we were just focusing on that preventative community support. So really looking at that information, advice and guidance the community offer rather than the other end in terms of accessing daycare services or residential care, for example. And we also identified that we really wanted to think about and identify those communication and engagement networks that worked within that community, but also improve our understanding of culturally appropriate support. So that's kind of the loose question, and we kind of know where we want to focus it. So next was kind of, right, okay, how are we going to go about this? Next slide, please, Fanny. So very much there was a few things for me that I thought have really got to be really clear about, starting from what we've already been told, not going out and asking communities the same questions or asking them things that they're thinking, well, we've told you this 3 times already and nothing's changed. Why should we tell you? Why should we tell you again? And we really wanted to see and really understand the issues, not just ask people about them. I wanted to actually really kind of get under the skin of it. We really wanted everybody to gain from the process. So we wanted it to be that mutual reciprocity, that mutual benefit for everybody involved. We wanted people to really be able to see really visible results. Again, we know that one of the criticisms is that often people come out, they ask some questions, they disappear, and nobody ever seems to know what happens next. So we really didn't want to create that sort of situation. We wanted for people to kind of see and know what the difference they were making, and for the sort of the whole engagement process to be part of the change rather than just a bit of a tokenistic one-off, and then to really be able to share that learning with others and build on that learning as we went. Next slide, please. But as you mentioned, there were some real challenges. We knew that obviously building trust was going to be a real challenge. We don't necessarily have really existing strong relationships with the groups of people that we were trying to reach. And we know there were challenges there. So we knew we'd have to think about actually how do we really go about that and actually engaging the right people in this piece of work, but also getting beyond the there's lots of places where people might instantly go when they want to do a piece of work with our diverse communities, and some of them get over engaged with because they've always got people coming to them saying, can we come and talk to your group about? So we really wanted to try and find some different people to talk to. Time obviously was a big concern, and you've talked about some of that in your barriers, but we knew actually if we really want to understand this, it's a huge topic. It's not the sort of thing we're going to be able to pop into to talk to a group about for an hour and come away going, right, that's that, we've sorted that now, we know what we need to know. But that's not just about our time. Actually, we're asking the community to potentially give us an awful lot of their time, and they're all busy people, busy lives. So really had to think about, actually, if we're going to do that, then we really need to make sure that it is worthwhile for them, and that we're not taking up too much of their time, and that it feels manageable and worthwhile for them. Obviously capacity, our capacity, the community's capacity to be able to support this piece of work was again a big consideration, and our resources. You talked about there's lots of different ways in terms of reciprocity, but we've got resources, but we've got processes, and some of that makes things complicated. So we really needed to think about, well, we need somewhere to, a venue and means to engage with these people. We need to be thinking about, well, what resources can we easily access that we can use in terms of giving that reciprocal kind of benefit for being involved. Have we got processes in place that are going to make that easy to do, or is that going to trip us up? And then also thinking about individual needs. I know you've talked about, some of those options about just reimbursing for expenses feels like a really basic level, giving vouchers, but then you've got lots of people with very different, especially as we engage with quite a broad section of the population, from younger people with families to older people, that actually people have got very different needs. people are in different situations in terms of benefits or being able to where they get income from. So there seemed to be loads of things we had to think about. So we really needed to try and come up with a bit of a pragmatic and practical solution that felt manageable. We didn't want to promise anything that we couldn't deliver. So we did a lot of thinking about it. So as I've mentioned, we started from what we know. There was a few things that we did know very specifically, that particularly lots of people out in the community, and particularly those communities, don't really know what's on offer, don't really know what's available around them. They don't really know what's there for them to access, and they tend to find it difficult to find out. We wanted to think about who have we talked to already. So we did quite a lot of mapping around what engagement has already been done around some of these things. What do we already know? What have people already managed to collect? Who have we talked to? We went and talked to lots of local partners and VCSE groups that engage with this community and get lots of insight from them in terms of what they thought would work, what wouldn't, what their concerns about it were, what their ideas were. And through that, we did make a really helpful contact with a lady who helped us with the project. So that was a really worthwhile piece of work. It took some time, but it was really, really beneficial in kind of giving us that grounding. Having identified the group that we were going to engage with, it was then thinking about, right, we really need to focus on how we make this a two-way reciprocal relationship, how we're going to learn together. As you said, because we wanted it to be a kind of a joint process where we're both learning from each other and sharing with each other. But we also really wanted to make sure there was built into that those opportunities for that longer term relationship. Because this was a piece of work about understanding, we didn't necessarily know if there was going to be a something at the end of it that we were going to co-produce with the same group. But we wanted to really make sure that actually we did have that opportunity for that continued longer term two-way relationship between them, so that actually we could keep going back to them and update them, or we could give them opportunities to get involved in other pieces of work that kind of came out of this piece of work. So I'm going to hand over to Benny now to talk a little bit more of a detail in terms of actually what we did and how we kind of address that issue.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. My name is Venia, and I work within the Supportive Communities team, Public Health. And like Peter said, this was a project that was basically for people who speak English as their second language. And the main aim was to understand how they communicate, how they want to engage going forward, and also what are the barriers and the enablers, like Peter mentioned. So the main project, while we talked to VCSEs and other partners, but we worked with the communities via the Riverside Church. The Riverside Church had an English language section which holds every Wednesday, and we're able to attend that section for 12 weeks. And it was basically us listening to people, being in the environment where they are aware of, environment where they were comfortable, people who they already know, and building that trust. The first few weeks, I would say, wasn't really an easy one because they were skeptical about talking to us. But going forward, as we built that trust, people were able to open up to us. We knew that people struggled to know about what support and services available to them. We've heard about these things every day, that people don't know where to go about health and care information, or even general information like food banks. And what we did was that we didn't go into these classes open-handed to ask, what do you know? Like Peter said, what we did was we worked with the Riverside Church to develop a learning program for the 12 weeks. So we inculcated what we already know about support and services out there into their English learning processes, into their worksheets. So it was more like the worksheets they were used to, but directed towards the health and well-being sector, which was really important to them. It was more like giving the partners, and we understood that we are not perfect in English language, so we identified what we think people needed and we shared it with them, and they were able to tell us what they can break into simple English, and helped us kind of break down that worksheet into a very clean, simple English that people could understand. And we did things around the website, we did things around community help points, we did things around Staffordshire Connect, food banks, pharmacy. And it was really alarming because so many of what we talked about, people were not aware of it, either because they've not heard of it before, or because they don't understand it from where they're coming from. or because they don't even have anywhere to ask about that information. So that helped us to kind of build the trust where we were able to give them something that was important to them, which was knowledge. And we also got back something that was important to us, which was understanding the community better. Okay. So the sections was broken into, I think, I would say we had about 60 people attend almost every day, or a minimum of 50 at least every Wednesday. And it was broken into different small groups. We had people who had advanced English language. We had people who had very basic English language, and we had intermediate classes. And we were able to sit with each and every one of the groups in different times, and we talked with them and we shared our experience with them. It was more like an informal way to build relationship, but a very good one, I would say. And people had the opportunity to go into the real time, real life example. For example, when we talked about the Staffordshire Connects, which was our local directory, we understood that out of 60 people in the room, only one person knew about Staffordshire Connects. And then we started doing that hands-on experiment with them where we said you can translate it to your language. And we started picking things around. There are some languages that we couldn't find there where we had Kurdish, but there was a particular type of Kurdish that wasn't there, which was really interesting because from our point of view, we would say we had Kurdish there, but that wasn't their point of view. So we got that as a feedback and we kind of tailored it back to what we wanted. And people now felt comfortable asking us questions around personal needs, how to assess support and services, and opportunities to sit with them and kind of see from their perspective how things work, because we were able to kind of not just sit with them but talk with them, explain to them, and also see how they look at how people search for things online. For example, people might not go about asking what's a community help point, but they rather ask help near me or support near me and those kind of things. And we also had some people felt able to disclose support needs that they would not really share with others, which was a very good thing because then we had already started building trust. Like Peter said, that was actually the center of everything we did within this engagement, and continually reviewed the learning and changed the processes. So as we go by, we were also working with the English language teachers to understand what people wanted to hear more, what we think was going to be interesting to people, and we built that into the every week section.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to that quickly, Venny, we particularly for the IT sessions, so we had, so one of the sort of group activities was they were given some things to find on a website, some information about the food bank opening times, or stuff on our website, stuff on Staffordshire Connects, and we brought in our IT digital lead as well to just be around for the session. And that it was so powerful actually watching them have a go and then actually really seeing in real time the things that they struggled with, the things that were difficult, how difficult it was for them to actually find some of that basic information that they needed, because it was hidden away. You had to scroll to a bottom of a page, which if you're on a mobile phone, some of them had phones enlarged for their eyesight, which meant actually whole sections of the page were missing, so they couldn't see menus that had things, so they struggled to find things. I think just some of that real experience of just doing with and really seeing, and again some of the language stuff that we don't think about. We were talking about, if you go along to the library, you can go along to the library for signposting, and people kind of saying, well, why would I go to the library for a signpost? Because there's some of these words that are really common and they're in our everyday language, but translated make no sense to other
Yeah.
people at all because they just don't translate. And so it is really, really, really helpful to just see that in practice, and really understand some of those things.
Thanks, Peter. So for the engagement, like I previously said, we directly engaged with um this group for 12 weeks, and we spoke with different people who speak different languages. I think the identified languages were Cantonese, Kurdish, Ukrainian, Polish, Romanian, Arabic, Latvian. We had lots of languages. I think we had up to 17 or thereabout, and we also spoke to 18 community groups. We spoke to Burton Unity, African and Caribbean communities. We spoke to people from Mind, and kind of built that. We part of that engagement even involved us visiting, presenting at the EDI section where we shared with them what we already did, what we've already found out, like Peter said, about websites, frequently asked questions that are not there. So some website could have things like they've talked about the food bank, but they never said anything around the opening times. They didn't say anything about whether I needed an ID card to get something. So those tiny questions. And I think one of the organization actually met Peter back and used that information to improve their website, which was really beneficial to everyone. And then we spoke to around 60 people, but when we calculated who they transferred the information we've shared with them with, we're kind of talking about 85 indirect beneficiaries that we could calculate, but we know that this is just an estimate and there is possibility that it's quite larger than that. And there was this thing around also building trust around these communities based on the VCSC started seeing that we really wanted to help the community from the community perspective, not only from the kind of the data and research perspective, but around insight and feedback and seeing how important that feedback is and using that feedback to improve what we're already working on in public health. So the learning about the processes. So these are what we've learned about this process going forward. And these are things we kind of hope to improve on also going forward. So the location matters. Previously, we've always had the mindset that if we wanted to talk to a Muslim community, you have to go to the mosque. If you wanted to talk to a Christian community, you have to go to church. But Riverside Church actually broke this whole rule because we had the male, we had the female, we had people from the Muslim community come under one roof, different gender, different faith, different culture, all for one purpose. And it actually builds trust. And for that was something Peter and I have said we really want to understand how this was done over time, because right now it's alarming how it broke every criteria we would have thought it could that could hold people back, because we saw cultures come together, we saw people talk about different lifestyle, and that was really beautiful. And trust actually was no shortcut. Like I said, from the first time we entered, from it wasn't it wasn't a tick box kind of situation, but people started warming up to us to an extent that they started asking about us when we're coming, when we're not coming. And actually it really made it didn't just make us feel better, but it also made us understand where these people, the perspective of things, and how difficult it is to find information. And we've always used that to kind of build back into what we have going forward. And we've also built that trust consistently because we've brought in part of those communities into our community champions program, which is really a very helpful one. So yes, we try to build that trust and we hope not to kind of drift from it. And it's value driven activities. So while we didn't know how to repay them around the engagement services or the time consuming services, but using what is already existing around giving them beneficial information and participating with them around engagement and learning new things about their communities while they also learn new things about our communities was really impactful. And also working with partners as experts was really helpful because, like I said from the beginning, Peter and I understood that we are not English language experts, and words like signposting was not what that community would be used to. So we kind of trusted the English language teacher and the manager of that project actually to help us build the worksheet, which was really, really interesting. And also the linguistic diversity. There was so much language, and on a plain note, people would always say, let's translate it to this language, let's translate it to Punjabi, let's translate it to Arabic. But we understood that translation was not actually the best thing for the community, because sometimes they just wanted things in very simple English, which was really, really alarming and actually an eye-opening thing to us. And doing with others to understand what's going on. So like the practical example Peter gave, where we worked with them with our phones, we tried to navigate things. And I think that was the first time myself navigated Staffordshire Connects via my phone, and I could see the hindrances people could experience, and also were able to kind of get back that feedback real time and started looking at how we could improve things. And also it was a holistic and an emotional support. So the truth is that you might, if you go through this route, well, like Peter said, it's not a perfect co-production, but there's an opportunity that you could hear things. So there is need to have really be open to support yourself or seek help when you need help, because people might tell you things that you might not really know how to handle them. And it's necessary to kind of support yourself going forward, or at least speak to someone about it without having to break that trust or break the information that has been given to you. And there's also need to kind of be being flexible and building time. It was a 12 weeks program, but then again, we had to go there every Wednesday. We had to be with them. We had to spend that 1 hour with them, and that actually kind of built a whole lot of trust. So the flexibility, the opportunity to be open to whatever comes and change things when needed. And especially with the worksheet, when we developed them and we shared it with the English class teachers, they were able to navigate us around, no, this might not be the best way to write it. And then we can come back and change it in the ways that they've actually recommended. So we're actually very open to a lot of flexible timings and experience and needs of people. So this is generally what we've put together as the impact of this engagement, where we've fed back what we've heard and how it has been, the information and feedback has been used to build up services. So the website accessibility service, which is the new Staffordshire County Council website, we've fed back this information. The community directory, which is ongoing, Staffordshire Connects, kind of to improve it. We're working on that already. And also generally comes around where people get information. We now know exactly how people want to get their information. And most importantly, what people have told us is the trust information coming from family and friends. And we've used that to build our community champions development program to make sure that we have representatives from these communities as champions in the program. And we've also used it to kind of build a fair access and co-production framework, and we've used it in the general public health activities, things around pregnancy, reducing infant mortality, and generally around information, advice, and guidance offer out there. And it's not something we hope on just keeping. It's something we have also shared with other people. So like I said, we shared it with the EDI group, we've shared it with NHS around vaccination, we've shared it with Minds around how using it to develop their website. So it's not a single thing, it's kind of a broad thing around this community, and it can actually feed into different projects and different ways of doing things.
Yeah,
So
thanks, Penny. I was just going to kind of say in summary, I think that's the one thing we both felt really passionate about, is that again we want to help other people not have to necessarily start from the same point. So anything we've learned that we can share, we're keen to do that. And I think there aren't any easy answers, particularly about reciprocity, but we were lucky because we found a group that was happy to work with us. They were a group that were meeting anyway. So that was time that they obviously valued. I mean, we had really bad snow one of the weeks, and Venny and I turned up expecting nobody to be there, and there were still over 50 people there, which I think showed how much they valued that group environment. They were coming to practice their English and improve their English. And because we built our activities into that, they are still happy because they're still learning English. It was learning for the church and the volunteers who ran the groups, because they'd never done a whole term topic on health and care before. So they were able to develop that with us. So they've got worksheets they can use again with future groups, but also it upskilled them, because obviously as we discovered, they are a really key trusted point of contact for those groups in terms of any questions and queries. So actually it was upskilling them in terms of helping and being able to answer and provide that support as well. So I know we certainly got a lot out of it, and we really, really enjoyed it. I know our IT lead said it was one of the best sessions he's ever been to in terms of really helping him see. And also we know, from the feedback we had from the group, that the group found it beneficial. So it was kind of a way of us thinking, what have we got that we can hopefully kind of share that in a way that feels useful and kind of respectful of other people's time and commitment.
Thank you so much, Pat and Vinny. I think, an absolutely brilliant example of how reciprocity can be used in a different way, and how I think some key points there that we addressed kind of at the beginning around there is value in building those relationships and building that trust, and you can see through that project that was clearly something that was established, and was testament to the fact that so many people turned up regularly. So just before we move on to kind of the discussion points and the next section, has anybody got any questions for Venny or at all? Stephen?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, more comments really on what you made me think about in terms of the the elements of the co-production that you've done. First of all, it was interesting when you mentioned about how these co-productive conversations can lead people into areas where they might not know what to say, or they might not know how to take in certain pieces of information. And I find that interesting because it's something that we've been thinking about, like where does co-production and the safeguarding element kind of meet? And I know that's kind of, it's very contextual and dynamic, isn't it, in terms of a safeguarding, any kind of planning that you could do. But that's something for us perhaps to consider as a group, as when we are doing co-productive exercises, what kind of safeguarding training do we have in place? Because I suppose the more co-productive we become, the more comfortable people become, the more often or kind of easy disclosures might become for people, and how we navigate that as well, and not risk that co-productive exercise. I suppose it's, yeah, you made me think quite a lot about that, and I'm grateful for that. And the other thing was the on the point of the church being an area where there was so many different languages and so many different, I suppose, faiths perhaps. And I think that's really, really good to hear, because I think there's some locations in Stoke that are matching that, like community lounge style, which, might be taking place in churches, but it's not necessarily like a kind of a Christian group or this faith group. It's actually quite mixed in terms of faith. So that seems to be an example where a kind of natural co-production is happening, which I think it might be worth exploring more in the future, like those kinds of people who are just doing it without knowing the words. I find them quite interesting as well. But yeah, I just want to say thank you, and you've given me a lot of food for thought, so thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. Melody?
Oh, yeah, same again. So thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for sharing your learning. My question was mainly around the sustainability of it. So how do you keep that engagement once, I suppose, the project's finished? Or if you've got anything you could share around that, that'd be really beneficial for us here at UH&M.
So we've got our community champions program, and we knew that we wanted to, I mean, it's something that started in COVID and had a very specific kind of role around COVID, and then it kind of developed through some citizens' inquiries that we did, but we knew that we wanted to kind of revamp and relaunch that. And this seemed a really good opportunity to, whenever we're kind of making the links with groups through sort of engagement and co-production activity, to connect them with our champions network, because the whole purpose of that network is for us to be able to share information and opportunities with the community, but also for them to share feedback, insight, information that they want to share with us, and create that two-way route into communities. So that was the sort of the topic that we ended on, because we know that these people will be informal community champions in their own communities. We know that particularly when they're a smaller community that speaks a specific language or has come here from, for example, there was a group of people who'd all come from Hong Kong, that they very quickly create their own network, and they have their own WhatsApp network, and that's where they'll ask questions. But it's also, a lot of them can be in a similar position. They're kind of reliant on somebody in that group having been here for longer and having discovered some answers that they can then share. Well, this was a really great way of getting into all of those networks. And people were telling us, weren't they, Venny, that they were sharing some of the links and the information we'd shared with them on their WhatsApp groups with friends, family, contacts, other people in the community that they knew. So it was difficult for us to measure that, but we knew actually what we were sharing was getting out wider. So we were trying to encourage them to see themselves as community champions. And because we've got that relationship, some of them were a little bit reluctant to sign up straight away. They were kind of like, oh no, that's not really me, that's other people more important than me. But it's just keep building that relationship and that trust, and helping them to see themselves that actually that is a role that they are taking, and we are here to carry on supporting them. And the same with the volunteer tutors. Again, that's another link for us, because then that gives them a kind of direct route in to kind of share insight they're gathering from the groups with us, or ask us for any help and support that they know we might be able to help provide. Anything you want to add, Penny? Sorry.
No, I think you've kind of summarized it with the community champions, because we now have the project lead as a community champion who is really engaged, and it's helped us to kind of build around that community and share information with that community.
Yeah, I love that. So it's not just like a kind of end of product. You kind of open them up to a wider community. That's great.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, there is Venny's putting together a website review group, because we've mentioned that we've developed the website and the accessibility, and we fed this work into it, and we wanted to have some real people out in the community who could kind of keep looking at the website regularly and checking bits of it. And so it's things like that. They're new opportunities that we can go back to all of our champions, but including people from that group, and say, this is a piece of work that's come from what you were involved in, and there is an opportunity to get involved in it if you would like to. So it gives us that opportunity to reach out with new opportunities for them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got Rachel.
Hi, yeah, I think you've sort of half answered it there, actually. I was just thinking about how you know that relationship's coming to a sort of an appropriate end, and at what point, and what's the best way to do that. But also, obviously, you highlighted that there's other bits of work that you have obviously highlighted that coming out of that, and actually is the temptation to keep that going and complete those as part of that relationship. But it sounds like actually you've brought things to a close, and actually you're going back with an option for people to then get involved in certain things if they want to. I suppose it's where and when that relationship ends, and actually and how, and then actually with the other additional things, I suppose it's understanding how to maintain that connection and give people an option, I suppose. So you've sort of half answered it, but it was just something that was in my head, really, that I was mulling over.
I think because it was an existing group, it wasn't a group that we pulled together that met for their own purpose, because lots of these community groups, they have their own purpose for meeting. They don't meet so that we can go and engage with them and co-produce with them. We were very sensitive to that. So we had that, right, we've got a term, and we knew about the champions. So we thought that's a good way to end it and kind of have that open door to some further work. We also, because we didn't know exactly what work would come out of it, we wanted that opportunity. So we've got that link with the project leader to be able to go back to them and give it to them as an opportunity. But we also, they've already given us so much of their time, and the actual projects that come out of it might not be of interest to them or a good use of their time or something that they want to do. So I think we're trying to be sort of sensitive to that, but make sure that they are regularly hearing about what's happening as a result, and always having that opportunity to say, if this is something you'd like to be involved in, you can. I guess it might have been different if we'd brought the group together for a purpose and we'd had something we wanted to co-produce. Obviously, you probably want to co-produce it with the same people, but that would have been a huge, we're still working on this. I mean, the original engagement started before Christmas 2024. So we first went to the group before Christmas 2024, and then we did the work sort of January to Easter 2025, and there's still pieces of work coming out of it now. So
Rachel, is that just from before, or
no? Sorry, a follow-up question.
Okay.
So thank you, Peter, for answering that. And also, I think my other question is, so what Emma was highlighting right at the very beginning around that power sharing, how do you make sure that that's happening, and that there is that breakdown of that power dynamic, and how do you reaffirm to them that they have that agency, I suppose, and that it isn't a collaboration, that it is a co-production? I suppose it's that difference, isn't it?
I think,
yeah.
Sorry, Peter. I just want to say, I think this actually fits well and really coincides with the questions that we've been asked, because some of the questions, so we invited people to ask questions ahead of the session, and so I think this is a really good point to have this discussion. So one of them, which I think has been really well answered through Benny and Peter's presentation is, what are those beyond monetary pay, but what are those meaningful ways that make people feel like their contributions have been rewarded? And I think there's been brilliant examples of that kind of relationship building and how the project's continued. But the question that you just asked there, Rachel, also fits in really nicely with one of the other questions that's asked. So it will probably be worthwhile to have this discussion. It is about that power sharing. So I'm just going to pop it in the chat. Because one of the questions that was also asked is, how do we, and again ties in with what Stephen commented on earlier, how do we support staff to feel comfortable with reciprocity as well, when they're often used to being the experts? So how do we make staff feel that the professional expertise aren't being replaced, and how do we marry that up with service users' lived experience? So sorry, Peter, I will leave you to answer, but if anybody else kind of wants to contribute around that, I just thought that was a really nice point where it also kind of very well fit in with the question that we were asked as well.
I mean, I'm happy to mention, but I appreciate it. We've taken up loads of time, so if other people want to come in and talk, that's fine. I think what helped us is we established right from the start that this wasn't us going in imparting knowledge and trying to tell them how to use. This was us saying, right, we're going to look at Staffordshire Connects, for example, or community help points, and because they were there to learn English and we are not the experts in how do we help somebody who doesn't speak English very well or read English very well learn about community help points. We were very much sitting around the table with them, learning as they were learning. So we might have provided the idea and the topic and the basic information, but actually it was the group that were kind of leading the discussion around, and because they were all different groups, they were mixed. They weren't based on language, because they encouraged them to mix and to talk to other people and not just to all help each other because they all speak the same language. But they were all at different stages, so they all wanted to learn in different ways. So we have very much had to be led by the group, because you very quickly realise that if you just go in and try and talk at them, they'd just switch off because they don't understand what you're saying. So you're getting nowhere. So we did very much right from when we first went to the group. The first few times we met, we didn't do anything. We just literally sat at the tables, we watched, we listened, we had a cup of coffee and a biscuit with them. You know, we didn't actually try and go in as the experts. We went in as with people coming to see what goes on, and we're here. If you've got any questions, we'll try and answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Rachel's just put there in the chat, honesty is really important around that when it comes to power sharing as well. Those expectations and those achievable goals, and goes back to what we were saying at the beginning about that transparency. It's being able to have those open and honest conversations and being able to take accountability if things don't happen quickly. Co-production isn't something that will happen overnight. It is something that is a very long-term process, and I think that's what initially sometimes puts people off engaging and really utilising co-production, because of that time investment, because it involves, you know, the addition of so many professionals, clearing that time and being able to sit around the same tables to enable that power sharing to happen. But it is it is that recognition that it is a long-term gain, and once co-production is something that is used in everyday practices, it becomes something that does become quite natural and naturally aids and improves that service design. And Melody's popped in there as well, those kind of links to improvement science, talk about curiosity and understanding before jumping to conclusions. Yeah, co-production absolutely is an extension of that. It's about meeting people where they are and really kind of understanding how we can work together to improve those things. So yeah, absolutely. Benny?
Just wanted to add from what Peter said that it also has to do with so much of giving people that time to build that trust. So for example, like Peter said, we didn't just go in and kind of ask questions around what you need, but we sat on the table with them when they were discussing around New Year experience in their places. We talked about our experience, we shared our experience with them. So that was a opportunity to build that trust and build that relationship where we shared with them what we know, not just about what we came for, but about our personal self, while they also talked about what they've experienced in the places, which was really helpful. And it kind of set the scene, if I would call it that, with every other thing that moved forward.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to, on regards to the question, supporting staff, and I think it's something that you've kind of touched on with this program that you've been doing as well in the presentation. I suppose it's supporting managers to help staff understand the language of expertise, and that it's not, you can be the expertise of your own life and your own skills where you are at that point in time, but that doesn't override somebody else's experience or somebody else's expertise, and that there isn't really that need for that competition or that hierarchical feeling. I mean, sometimes there is a need for that when it's like kind of more of a structured, I don't know, like funding arrangement, or somebody's got to make the decision. But I think with work like this, it's like it's having the confidence to talk about that language. What are you the expert on in your life? What do you know that you want to learn more on? Are there experiences in your own life that you perhaps need to dig more into to understand them and how they can come across for others and help others? But also putting it out there as I'm from VCSE, so of kind of volunteer management and participant management kind of expertise. How do you support people that you're managing to learn that they are they are encased within their own history and their own pathway, but that doesn't have to be in competition with anybody else, and it's not like a kind of scoring board of life, I suppose. That's how I would think about that question in terms of supporting staff, so they've got that confidence to say, yeah, that other person there who is the expert in their own being it's not a threat to me and who I am and my knowledge. It's, we can add to each other.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's a lot of what the presentation and the case study has touched on as well. It's when we use reciprocity as a two-way street, and it's the learnings that we can gain from each other, I think, are really, really important. And exactly as you said, Stephen, it's getting staff to recognise also the value in that and not feel threatened around that. But it is the importance of involving those people with lived experience and recognising the value that each party is going to gain from that. So yeah, absolutely. Zoe?
Yeah, it's just interesting in terms of, I think, some of the conversations around that, supporting staff, the language used, all those kind of things, just it aligns with the infants, children and young people's trauma-informed promise that we just write in. So it's helpful to hear that that's all kind of all in the same direction, all aligned as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that's what it's nice to see with co-production. It's nice to see that actually engaging in these conversations and having these conversations is where we can kind of reflect on our own practice and start to recognise where there might be opportunities where we're actually already doing this, where we don't necessarily give ourselves that credit or recognise those kind of contributions. So yeah, I think those are really, really important. So thank you for sharing those. Thank you so much, Peter and Benny, for sharing that insight today. I can see I'm sure you can read in the comments that people have found that really, really interesting. So thank you. I don't want to keep people for too much longer, but just to say really there, I hope that you found the conversations useful. I hope that some of this has allowed you to kind of reflect on your own practice and think a little bit about how we can start to use reciprocity moving forward, in terms of embedding co-production across those different services. It's really nice to see so many colleagues from different sectors and different providers and organisations today, which I think is really, really useful. Just to let anybody know or make anybody aware, if they're not already aware, we do host, or I do host, should I say, a bi-monthly community of practice where we kind of talk all things co-production co-production. Our next one is going to be at the end of July. So if there is anybody on here that isn't already signed up to that or hasn't attended one and would be interested, or you'd like to find out any more about ways in which we can kind of support each other with co-production, I will pop my email address into the chat. So if anybody wants to kind of get in touch around that, you're more than welcome to, or to be invited to that. The next session, as I said, will be at the end of July, and then what we tend to feature is we do feature a spotlight session very similar to today's during every other meeting, where it's just really nice to get the chance to, you know, we all work in daily practices where we're coming up against the barriers or constraints, so it's really nice every once in a while on a session like this to listen to those impactful case studies and kind of take that time to recognise where those differences are being made. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate how busy everybody is, so I really recognise and value the time that you've taken out to join us today. I do hope you found the session useful. If you do have any colleagues that have been unable to attend today that was hoping to, if you could please let them know that the recording will be available on our YouTube website. We've also got a host of co-production videos that have been released this week. If you don't already follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram across our social media, we have worked with partners across this week to release a number of co-production videos done in collaboration with young people, with service users, to talk about the importance of co-production to them as well. Melody's just popped on in the chat there, Peter, about whether it would be possible to maybe share the slides. So
yeah, I was just replying in the chat. I can send them over to you, Emma, if you like, and then if you want to make them available, that's fine.
That would be perfect, and then I'll take the attendee list from today and I'll get them circulated to everybody. So again, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much. I hope to see some of you at the next community of practice, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the working week and your weekends. Thank you so much for your time.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.